Welcome, everyone, to It's a Wrap with Rap. I am your host, Ron Rappaport. This podcast features extraordinary people who do special things to enrich our lives and people who have overcome major challenges and adversities in their lives to come out on top, as well as people who can educate us on an assortment of topics. My guest today is Brenda Currey Lewis. She is an author. She authored the book that was featured on our Facebook page, A Twisted Fate, My Life with Dystonia, and has lived with generalized dystonia since 1974, when she was 7 years old. She is 54 years old now. Dystonia is a neurological movement disorder that causes muscles to contract and spasm involuntarily. The neurological mechanism that makes muscles relax when they are not in use does not function properly. Dystonia is the third most common movement disorder, next only to Parkinson's and tremor. While it is a chronic disorder, the overwhelming majority of cases are not fatal. Estimates suggest that no fewer than 300,000 people in North America are affected. Brenda's torso is twisted and her left hip continually straightens and twists inward. Therefore, her left leg refuses to stay on the foot pedal of her wheelchair. Her leg demands to stick out to the side, whether she is sitting or standing, and gets in the way. Her left knee needs to straighten too, and her foot clenches quite vigorously most of the time. Her left shoulder and arm have a permanent tremor. When people ask about her condition and she tells them she has a rare neurological disorder called dystonia, they usually draw a blank. She is with us to tell her story and advocate for awareness to dystonia. Welcome, Brenda, to the podcast.
Thank you, Ron. Good to see you.
We're so glad to have you. Could you briefly describe your early years prior to within 3 months after your 7th birthday? What life was like for you?
Oh, it was a normal childhood. I was curious. I was loving the outdoors. I was getting involved in activities like every other able-bodied child. And life was pretty good. Yeah. We had wonderful summer holidays and cold winters up here in Canada. But they were good. Everything was going along pretty good.
Edmonton, Alberta.
Right.
Yep.
Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. Yeah.
Beautiful country.
Yeah.
Can you be born with dystonia, and can it be hereditary?
Well, you can be born with it. Symptoms don't usually show up until you're, I think it's 5 to 13 is the average age. If you are going to get generalized dystonia, that's usually the years that the symptoms will show themselves. Everything, by the way, there's an exception to every rule, but yes, you can be born with it, yes, if it's hereditary.
Brenda, describe to us what started happening to you at age 7 and 3 months, and what was the family's reaction?
Okay, well, I was kind of clumsy. I started being very clumsy, and my left foot, I kind of started walking on the outside edge of my foot, and then I was pigeon-toed. And I remember this only from my mom's recollections, but they would see me walking, and I started getting a little more clumsy than usual. And yeah, my foot was turning in, and my mom would slap my leg and look at my leg and move it and ask me why I was doing this, and I had no answer for her. And so as the summer progressed, it got worse. So the first day of school of grade 2, I was in a doctor's office, and But my family, yeah, they, could tell something was up, but no one knew what it was or how serious it was, and life just had to go on. But yeah, so,
Oh,
but
What
things were getting tough physically, yes.
what was the process like to get it diagnosed correctly? And tell us what many people are told by a doctor who doesn't know what it is, and approximately how long does it take to get a correct diagnosis in today's world?
Okay, well, things really haven't progressed as they should have since 1974. For me, it was very unusual and I was very lucky. And I was diagnosed, the symptoms started in about start of July of that summer. And we started going from doctor to doctor, and they had no idea what was wrong. And one doctor just said, "Oh, it's ligament damage in your knee," and they rolled me up in gauze and sent me home. That didn't help anything. And so finally, one doctor just told my mom I was looking for attention and to go home, and I'd grow out of it. And my
Wow.
mom, my mom knew that wasn't the case. She knew me better than that.
She had that motherly instinct, huh?
She did. She
Yeah.
did. And she quite a feisty woman and wouldn't settle for that. So luckily we had a relative who was a doctor who knew a pediatric neurologist. And my mom was talking to him and saying that we had an appointment with this doctor, but it was months down the road. But we knew him, and he said, "Oh, well, I think I can pull some strings here and get you a appointment right away." And she did. He did, and he admitted me into the hospital right then and there, and did extensive tests, X-rays, and EEGs and everything to rule everything out. And after 2 weeks of testing, he was able to say that I had dystonia. And again, I was very lucky because he had actually seen a case or two in his life, in his career that
Yeah.
far, and was able to recognize the movements and the pulling of the muscles, and he rolled everything else out, and I was called dystonia musculorum deformans. That's the full name for generalized dystonia. And my mom didn't know whether to laugh or cry, she said, because she had no idea what it would mean for me. And he said, "Well, you can laugh because it's not going to kill me and it's not a tumor." But besides that, he couldn't really say what my future would hold. So,
Right, right.
yeah.
You stated in the book, which I read, and I recommend the book to everyone. It's a great book.
Oh, thank you.
You stated that every case is so different, yet very much the same.
Yes.
What did you mean by that?
Well, if anyone will tell you their story, and everyone will, they getting their dystonia. There are different types of it. You can get it in all different parts of your body. And there's always a common thread of, the whatever part of the body it would start at. It was pulling and twisting and getting very embarrassed and not wanting to go out in public, and going to doctors who will say, "Oh, there's nothing wrong," or "It's too much stress," or it's all in your head, and just go home. And when you're told that enough times, you start to believe it, and you alienate yourself from going out because you don't want people staring at you and you don't know what's wrong. So the symptom and the reaction you'll get from the medical community is very much the same. But everyone is very individualized with their symptoms. intensity and what way your body is pulled. It's just everyone's different.
Right,
Yeah.
right. And I can relate to a lot of this. I'm a male breast cancer survivor,
Yes.
and we advocate, and we go through the same thing, where some of the doctors just poo-poo it off, and they say it's not, it's nothing, it's a cyst or whatever, a calcium buildup. And we've
Yeah.
had instances like that. So I can relate. I can relate. And we're a rare disease, and so are you.
Hmm.
Uh, Tell us about your school years coping, getting around, and how were you received by your peers as the dystonia progressed?
Okay. Well, that first year was very difficult in school. I was now in grade 2, and then the second grade classes were all on the second floor. And I tried and wanted to be as independent as I could and just drag myself up the stairs, with a foot that was doing what I wanted to do and wouldn't do what I wanted to do. And I'd be just dragging and pulling myself up the handrail up to my class. And of course I was getting attention from my symptoms, and attention I didn't want. And I remember I used to walk to school with a friend every day in grade 1. And in grade 2, she didn't want to be seen with me, so she'd walk on the other side of the street. And that confused me. And stuff like that was starting to happen. And you really notice differences.
Yeah,
And yeah, and the other kids had known me when I was perfectly physically able, and now I wasn't, and it's
yeah,
confusing for all of us, I think.
sure.
Yeah, yeah. So
Can you briefly tell us uh, about your 9, and I repeat, 9 brain surgeries at a young age, the result and the effect on your family?
okay. Well, I had a brain surgery called a thalamotomy. Quickly, there is a brain surgery that they do today. It's different, but it wasn't around in the 70s when I required it. But it required sticking a probe into my brain, and they would target a certain area of the brain, and I would have to be awake for it because they would send a little tingle through a certain area of the body. And if that tingle was in the area that was where my dystonia was acting out, they would, freeze those cells, kill them, and hopefully, take the symptoms away. And the first one did no good. And the second one, I had great results, but only for a day or two, and things went back to where they were. And then we went home, and then I went back and did the same thing again, and they hit a blood vessel in my brain, and that caused a stroke-like reaction on my right side. So they were all pretty devastated about that, but in the long run, it was a godsend because it took away my dystonic symptoms. But then we thought, well, okay, I'm on the right track again. I'll have a limp and all the rest of it, but I'd, get back to walking and life could resume. And my mom noticed that my left foot was now starting to do what my right foot had started to do a year or two earlier. So they operated on the other side of my brain, and I don't really know what happened, but ever since I woke up from that surgery, I've had a tremor in my shoulder and my arm that limits me in some ways and not others. So yeah, we were told this surgery was really the only option for me because medications really weren't doing a whole lot. There isn't really a oral medication that will help generalized dystonia.
Yeah.
And I, wasn't getting a lot of help, so we had this surgery, but it had its its positives and its negatives.
Yeah.
And that all happened within a space of about 2 years. I had 9 of those surgeries. So
that's 9 surgeries
mhm,
in 2 years.
yeah.
And what age were you when that was going on?
I was probably between 8 and 10. Yes,
Between 8 and 10.
8 and 10. Yes.
So you had so many ups and downs with the surgical procedures at such a young age. Tell us, how did you keep your spirits up?
I don't know. I was just always the kind who wanted to be involved in everything, and my parents could see very well that I was now being pushed to the sidelines and wasn't able to, interact the same way I used to with my friends, and it was tough. And I did whatever and my parents worked very hard to get me involved in things, even if it wasn't in the same capacity. And I don't know. I guess I've always been a fairly happy kid, no matter.
Well, that's
what.
good. Yeah, that's very good.
Yeah, and
It would have been a nightmare if you would have been a sad kid. That's for sure.
yes, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, all the people I know with dystonia have great outlooks, have, don't let it stop them. So, I was happy with what I got, and have to say my parents and my family were very good at making sure I got,
Yeah, they tried their best to keep it.
involved in things. Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
keep it as normal as possible.
But it was a tough spot to fill.
Yeah, absolutely. Why do you think your family tried all those surgeries?
My mom, well, she nothing or very little about dystonia was known, and not much more is known right now. The theory is it's a chemical imbalance in the part of the brain that controls muscles, and that the brain may be kind of emitting too much of a certain chemical at a time when I'm not asking, my muscles aren't asking for it. So my mom thought, well, okay, if it's a chemical imbalance, there's new drugs being created all the time. She had a great outlook on on the future, and medication wasn't working, and the doctor just said, hey, there is brain surgery and it could help. So since nothing else was helping, it was the next
Right.
answer. So we went for it, and finally, after the second slip up, whatever happened with my right or left arm, that was over, and we wouldn't resume any more surgery or brain surgery when we move on to a new chapter. Yeah.
Right. Are there any effective treatments or a cure, or is surgery just the option?
Well, I guess it might depend on what kind of dystonia you have, but for generalized, there's really no oral medication, although I've been taking oral medication for years. Some people, it just depends on their body if something is going to work for them. I'm sure everyone has heard about Botox injections.
Yeah. Mhm.
You hear a lot about it for medical or for cosmetic reasons, but years before it was ever out for cosmetic reasons, they were using it with dystonia. And I don't know what the stats are, but some people it works very well. Some it doesn't work at all. Some it'll take a long time to start working. I take the shots now, and sometimes I think it's working, and sometimes I don't think it's doing anything at all. So it's just really, really hard for people to find something that's going to work for them. And
Yeah.
and there is no cure or no real, oh, take this, it will work. It's just take this because it might work.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Brenda, can dystonia just go away?
well, I don't know every case out there, but I don't think so. It can lessen, it can remit for a while and then come back in a different way or a different part of your body, I think. It's just something you can't tell, you can't predict.
You can't predict.
No, there's no predicting.
In your book, you said that dystonia can happen to anyone.
Yes.
Why did you say that?
Okay, well, in my case, my dystonia is hereditary. I got it from my dad's genes. My dad carried the gene, didn't have symptoms, but carried the gene. And he had a 50-50 chance of passing it on. And me and my sister both got the gene. Now, if you get the gene, that doesn't mean you've got dystonia, but there's a 30-40% chance you could develop symptoms. And I developed symptoms and my sister didn't. So it's hereditary, but there are many people with different types of dystonia who have no medical history in their family of it. And now you can only test for generalized dystonia to find a gene. So all the other dystonias, there's no way of telling that you have it, but people develop symptoms. So, it can happen to anyone. Even if it's not in their family. So
How long has that genetic test been around?
let's see, probably, well, I'd say 20 years, give or take.
Okay.
Not a long time, but
So if someone in the family has it, it probably would be
yes.
a good idea to get tested.
Yeah, I would say. And another thing is, there is one other case in the family. It was my dad's cousin's son, and my dad wasn't close with that side of the family, but my mom had heard that there was a boy named Rob, distantly related, had some affliction and didn't know what it was, but wondered if that maybe was what I had, and it turned out it was. And since that side of the family wasn't close with us, I met the guy once or twice, but but we didn't know about it. They didn't share. Maybe they didn't even know it was hereditary. We don't know. But but it is in our family. So will it show up again? We hope not. It could skip generations,
It's similar to breast cancer, what we face in the male breast cancer. A lot of similarities with the the genes and everything. And yeah,
that's interesting.
how did society treat disabled people back in the 70s and 80s, and how have things changed?
Oh, well, I must say, attitudes towards disabled have changed very much for the better.
That's good.
Yeah, if you're disabled and you're with a friend or another person, they kind of, the shopkeeper or wherever you were, would, ask the able-bodied person a question, and I'd be sitting right there and he'd ask someone else. And or if a kid was staring at you, a parent would, grab their arm and tell them don't stare and just go on. But people are really great whenever I'm out. If I drop something or need help of any kind, usually there's someone there who will just jump up and help me and make conversation and treat me like I'm a real person. So
I'm glad to hear that.
yeah, people really are great one-on-one. Yeah, I have to say.
I think we're all kind of wondering, did you have any close calls with accidents throughout the years?
Well, I move very awkwardly. Well, no, nothing too bad. There is a story in my book about how I fell into a campfire.
I believe I read that.
Yes, yeah, that was, I think God intervened in that one for me. I was in a rickety old wheelchair, and my drink was on the ground on the other side of on the right side, and I was left-handed, and I reached over to grab my drink, and right into the fire I went, and my friends were quick acting and pulled me out and rolled me down the hill and hosed me down. And I had long red hair at the time, but I was in French parades. And I was in a hockey jacket, and the hockey jacket kind of melted, but it had an asbestos lining, and that saved me from going up in flames. So that was a close call. I was so lucky not to be hurt or have any terrible burns, but stuff like that. Yeah,
Yeah.
a lot of times I'll be standing, or if I do walk every once in a while, I do look very awkward, and I give a lot of people great shocks when they think I'm gonna be doing a nosedive, but for some reason I don't fall. I can right myself, but yeah,
Wow.
I'm very awkward. Yeah.
Can you describe to us some of the daily things dystonia affects in your life? And what are some of the most frustrating things about living with the disease?
Oh, wow. It's a big struggle. Your muscles work against you. They don't care where you are, in what tight quarters you're sitting or anything like that. Let's see. Let's say putting on my shoes when I was young. Shoes are designed now a lot better for comfort, for putting on, but when my foot would clench up, trying to put my shoe on could be a very emotional part of my day, with my mom trying to like balling up your fist and trying to put on a glove. It's just not
It's just
not gonna
not going to
work.
work. Yeah.
Or it will work, but you've got to work at it. And
Yeah.
that my hip kind of straightens out, which makes me lean backward, and then I twist. And I wear a back brace, and when I twist, my shirt or whatever I'm wearing will bunch up and twist around, and I'm forever pulling my clothes back in the right direction. And just I don't know. I guess I'm so used to it now. I don't see any of these things as the big problem that they are. But those type of things are just
Frus-
Real frustrating.
Somewhat frustrating, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Can you briefly tell our audience the different forms of dystonia?
Okay, well, I hope I don't leave any out, but you can get it in your neck, where your neck is pulled to the side, pulled back, maybe tremor back and forth. You can get in your voice box, where your voice is very forced and very deep and very breathy. You can get in your jaw and your tongue. I know a woman whose jaw is clenched shut 24/7, which really, the muscles on the side of her face are very painful because they're strained all the time. Let's see, you can get in your neck and your shoulder. You can get in your eyelids, where your eyelids will flutter or just snap shut at any given time, and you're taken off guard by that. So sometimes you're considered legally blind, yet you can see perfectly well. But yeah. I'm probably forgetting a whole bunch of different things, but you wouldn't think all of these things would be related and
Yeah.
all the one disorder. They all have their own names, of course, but it's just involuntary movement. Yeah.
All originating in the brain.
Yes. And
Go ahead.
One thing, I don't know this for sure, but I think dystonia is the only neurological disorder where there's absolutely nothing wrong with your muscles. It's just the signals that are being sent to the muscles. Whereas Parkinson's and MS, there's all some degeneration of some sort within the muscle.
Right.
But dystonia, it's not in the muscles at all. It's in the brain. Yeah.
Can you tell our audience who Rick Hansen is and how did he inspire you?
Okay. Rick Hansen is a wheelchair athlete from Canada. He had a spinal cord injury to his back, which left him paralyzed from the waist down. He was an athlete, and he decided that paralysis and his affliction needed awareness. So he wheeled himself around the world to raise awareness and money for spinal cord research. And he was on his way to the end of his worldwide tour, going through Alberta, where I live, to BC, which is next west of Alberta. And that's where his journey would end. And he was coming through town, and we went to see him. I see him give a little speech before he left for BC. And my mom and I went to, just hear his speech, and there were too many people around. So my mom took me out to the highway and said, "Oh, well, we'll just take your wheelchair out. You'll sit on the highway and wave as he goes by." And I thought, well, okay. So we were, but as he started to pick up momentum down the highway and just about past us, my mom pushed me out into the middle of the highway. And he didn't quite slow down, but he did say hello and ask me my name and everything else. And I was just so embarrassed and everything else. But he gave me inspiration that anything can be done. And I had been thinking about moving out on my own. Didn't really know how that would happen, but I was 20 years old at the time, and it's at home and not really doing a lot during the day yet. And I really wanted to start my independence. So he kind of helped me towards that end. And yeah, that was really.
That's great. And that's really great to know that that one person at that one moment inspired you. You know, I mean, he made a difference.
Yes, he
Yeah,
did.
that was great.
It was caught on camera, and I was embarrassed to see myself on TV. But
I don't know why, but
yeah.
tell us how do you deal with the stress of this? I know there's got to be some stress.
There's stress, yes. Well, I take stress fairly well. I laugh a lot. I have a very quirky sense of humor. When I first moved out, I started to have insomnia and would get up late at night, and the only thing on TV worth watching was David Letterman. And when he was still on the air, and I would continue this insomnia and watch David Letterman, who has a very quirky sense of humor. So I think I caught a bit from him. But laughter very much helps. But it builds up and comes to a point where I can get really mad at what's physically happening to me, or socially, or just really it's built up to a point where I kind of just blow up. And I'll only do this when I'm on my own and no one was around, but I'll scream and I'll maybe throw a thing or two and get it all out of my system, and then it'll be gone for a few months anyway, and it might happen again. But that's pretty well how I deal with it. You just learn.
Yeah.
After all the time, you learn to handle it better.
Brenda, how is life for you now? How are things going right now?
Well, things are going pretty good. For many years, like up to the age of 18, I would always see doctors, and I had a great orthopedic surgeon who would recommend doing certain surgeries or braces that he thought, might help. And but once you turn 18, you're kind of forgotten about. But I did go to a neurologist for a while and stuff like that, but I really wasn't tracked for a long time, didn't go to doctors or anything else. And then I finally, a few years ago, thought, I better start being proactive again, like my mom had been. There's really probably nothing new out there that would help me, but let's take my condition into my own hands. And so I've started going to physiotherapy. I have a therapist who deals in neurological disorders, and I go there every couple of weeks. And I'm really glad I started doing that, because I'm stretching, I'm working my right arm, which is my stroke arm. By the way, the stroke did take away my dystonic symptoms, but if I ever try to work either my arm or my leg back to being a bit stronger, or doing things a bit more normally, I kind of feel that tugging sensation within the muscles a bit. And that's very reminiscent of when dystonia started. So I don't do a lot with my right side, but now I'm doing a bit more with it. I'm doing more exercises for my back. Dystonia is quite in my torso, and I'm pulled to one side, but I do have a brace that helps a great deal. But I'm going to physio, and I'm getting Botox shots now. And I think they're helping my foot, if nothing else.
That's good.
Yeah, it doesn't clench up as tightly, and as it did. And it's a bit more relaxed. And life's pretty good, pretty good.
Well, that's good to hear.
With COVID, I've spent a lot more time at home, and sometimes slowing things down and staying at home is a good thing for me. I guess with age, I tire out a lot quicker and takes longer to recuperate. So it's good that I have the chance to stay home and relax and try to calm things down sometimes.
Is that physiotherapy helping?
I really think it is. Yeah. I'm learning little exercises that, stretching is very, very important. If my, my movement, half of my movement probably isn't even dystonia. If one of my leg or my hip or whatever want to pull me in one direction, I do everything in my power to stretch and move in the other direction, so that I'll loosen up, and I can maybe help my posture a bit that way. So I stretch a lot, and I'm learning different stretches to do at physio. So yeah, it's helping.
A question comes to mind. I'm sure a lot of people are thinking, is there any pain involved with having dystonia?
You know what? Many people with dystonia classify it as painful. And I have to say, for me, it's not. And
That's good.
And yeah, and you think with all the wear and tear that my muscles have put my body through over the years, that I'd be in pain, but really I'm not. So I'm very thankful. But yes, a lot of people, it's painful, and I can see why. Being in my limbs, you can counteract the pulling easier than if it's in your neck. Like if it's in your neck and your neck's pulling one way, well, to yank it the other way, it's
Right.
probably not going to be a smart thing to do. So I'm lucky that I have dystonia where I have it, but a lot of people don't have that, have an alternative way to do things. And I can see how it can be very painful and awkward. Yeah.
Another question comes to mind. How does the dystonia affect your sleep?
Over the years, it's been a problem. I take a lot of medication. Actually, I'm coming off of medication right now. My doctor, last time I had Botox, said that with my age and the medication I'm taking, that there's a good chance it could aid in dementia. And I thought, oh no.
Yeah, we don't need that.
Don't need that. So I'm weaning myself off. I'm probably not going to go off it all the way. It does do a little bit, but I certainly don't want dementia. But I've always said to people, I think I sleep pretty well because I'm heavily medicated. But at the moment, sleep is not a problem. It has been in the past.
Okay. So the involuntary movements don't wake you up, in other words.
No. And they do say that when you're asleep, dystonia stops. My mom and dad used to, when I lived at home, if they knew I was fast asleep, they'd open the door and just look at me for a little while because I was just lying there peacefully,
Yeah, sure.
like that. But so it's strange that it would disappear when you're asleep. It's really strange.
Now your parents said you never asked why me. What advice do you have for people out there facing their own challenges?
Uh-huh. Oh, I don't think I'm a person to give advice because, everyone's so individualistic. What works for me is not necessarily going to work for anyone else. But I would say if you just keep going, it gets better, even if it doesn't get better, you know what I mean?
Right. Keep going
Yeah.
forward.
Keep going forward. I really believe someday there will be some breakthrough of some sort, and hey, it might be even after I'm I'm gone from this earth. But I believe there are better days ahead, and we have to think that way, or else you can get into a lot of a lot of
Yeah.
emotions that are difficult to deal with. And yeah,
Well,
guess that's uh,
Brenda,
what
tell us about your advocacy and what kind of support is out there today.
well, I am the president of the Edmonton Dystonia support group. Um, we used to have meetings, but they were never well attended, and people for some reason did not show up for them. But there is a support group in Edmonton and in every major city in North America and in Europe, all over the place. Since my book has come out, I've met people from Brazil and Finland and England, etc., who have dystonia, and there's all sorts of support groups around the world. There's lots of literature, but there really isn't a lot to learn because there's no effective treatment.
So it doesn't seem like they're doing that much research. Is that what you're saying?
They are doing research, yes. We do fundraising here in Edmonton too, and the person I fundraise with is phenomenal at raising money, and so we're sometimes, individual researchers will ask for a grant. They might want to study a certain part of dystonia, and sometimes there's more people wanting grants than there is money to give out. So in that way, this was a couple of years ago I heard this, so that's promising. But there still isn't that magic bullet out there yet.
Yeah, no breakthrough. Yeah.
Yeah, no breakthroughs. But
Brenda, what excites you going forward?
What excites me going forward? Just the hope and the prayers that there will be a breakthrough. But people, that are misdiagnosed or wrongly diagnosed for years with no diagnosis at all, if it just getting a diagnosis when you've gone for years without one, hey, that can help a lot.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm not crazy. It's
Right.
not all in my head. That I got something real, and it's going to be a real tough road, but I know what it is now, and I can go from there. And a lot, like I say, Botox is a great help for a lot of people. Like I say, I don't have statistics, but I hear of a lot of people who get help by it to some degree or to a whole degree. So.
Brenda, how can people out there contact you?
Okay, well, I have email addresses. I'm on Facebook under A Twisted Fate, My Life with Dystonia. Same with Instagram. It's _twisted_fate. Twitter, it's at Currey Lewis, Currey. Lewis. Should I say my email address? Brenda Currey9@gmail.com. That's Brenda, BRENDA, CURREY, and the number 9@gmail.com.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to list all of your contact information in the podcast notes.
Oh, okay.
And also on my Facebook page, I believe I have your book cover on there as well right now.
Right.
So we're going to keep promoting that for you.
Oh, that's thank you.
Brenda, I just want to thank you for coming on and sharing your story and explaining to us what living with dystonia is all about, especially for people who maybe never heard of it or had no idea. You are indeed an inspiration to all of us, and I wish you good fortune going forward.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Ron.
And I want to tell the audience your comments and your suggestions to improve the podcast are always welcome. Our website is www.itsarapwithrap.com. Our Facebook page is It's a Rap with Rap. And you can email us at itsarapwithrap@gmail.com. Thanks everyone for listening. Stay safe out there. And for now, it's a wrap.